Hello, everyone. Welcome to AJD Consulting, where we focus on personal and professional development. This episode focuses on graduate school success. So, I have a very special guest here with me today. And I say this with so much joy because Dra Yvette Martinez-Vu, we met in 2023 on her own podcast, which she would share more about. But she has been a very inspirational person for me as I've been developing my own consulting business. So shout out to her. And so let's learn a little bit more about her. She's a first generation disabled and autistic Chicana, graduate school in productivity certified coach and consultant, and LinkedIn learning instructor. She is also the co-author of Is Graduate School for Me, as well as the co-author of Chicana Motherwork Anthology. She is the founder of Graduate School Femtoring LLC and the host of the award-winning Graduate School Femtoring podcast. She also helps first-gen students and professionals who identify as Black, Indigenous, and people of color navigate academia as well as their careers with sustainable productivity strategies. Her work focuses on graduate school admissions, executive functioning, flexible work systems, burnout prevention, and values aligned success. I'm acting nervous. Oh. Dr. Yvette offers coaching, consulting, and speaking engagements on graduate school admissions, career development, and productivity, as well as well being. I am so excited to have you here. How are you doing?
I am doing as good as I can be in light of all things going on in our country right now. But I'm actually doing really well because I'm here with you, and I'm so happy that we get to reconnect. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And again, I'm acting nervous, but I don't know why. I just feel like whenever the record comes on, I'm like, this has to be.
It's just a chat between colleagues and friends, just catching up and nerding out on some stuff. So hopefully, yeah, that can ease any tension for both of us because even though we're recording, what I love about podcasting and listening in on any podcast that I regularly listen to is just feeling like I'm eavesdropping on a conversation. And I love that. I love getting to hear other people chatting with each other and learning from them.
For sure. And of course, I wanted to get your introduction because you do so many things. And people may see it as unrelated, but everything you do is very connected because we are humans with lives and we are pulled in different directions. We have multiple roles and titles. And so I think you do a phenomenal job of bringing that all in. Whatever skills you learn in the graduate school space, that can also be applied to your personal life. And so I want to make that clear because we share our accolades and we share all the work that we've done, but all those things are connected and they're all here to help each other as we navigate all facets of life. And with that being said, as a person who does a lot of things, one of my other hobbies and jobs is a genealogist. And so as a genealogist, I am fascinated by origin stories. I want to know where you come from, how you are, all those things. Can you share a little bit about who you are, where you are from, and any of your hobbies and interests?
Yes, of course. Thanks for asking. And I love the genealogy question because I do think it's important to have that context and to understand people's background and where they come from and to understand ourselves and where we come from as well. So for me, when I introduce myself, I usually mention a lot of those identity markers that you mentioned from my bio. And I know not everybody does that. It's a personal decision. But I mentioned that I'm first gen. And one of the questions that comes up a lot in my work is that people ask me, how do you define first gen? And so for me, first gen means I am first gen in college, as in neither of my parents completed a 4-year degree. And I'm also first gen in the US, meaning that my parents were the first to migrate into the US from Mexico, from central and northern Mexico. And I'm the first to be born and raised in the US. So that's what I mean by first gen. I know that there are different definitions, and some folks consider themselves second gen in the US because their parents migrated here. So I just want to make that distinction. And I was born and raised in Southern California. So I am a Valley girl of all things. I'm from the San Fernando Valley specifically. And I'm from the northeast part of San Fernando Valley. So I grew up in a predominantly Latino immigrant community, and I grew up going to a public school setting, or I grew up attending a public school. I
Mhm.
was the first in my family to go and to graduate from college. One of the formative experiences that happened for me in my childhood was that at age 12, my dad suddenly passed away of a brain aneurysm. And at that time, I was 12, and my mom was left with six children. So, single mom, six children. It's a big part of all of our story in our family. And alongside that, being a pivotal moment of, as an eldest daughter, realizing that there was a lot on my plate. I was parentified in many ways. I had a lot of responsibilities. I had to grow up fast. But on the other side of things, I know a lot of us, when we think about our childhoods, will think about the negative, but there's a two sides to every story. For me, the silver lining is that I actually enjoyed and did well in school, and I also found a sanctuary in theater. So I was involved in theater acting, and I did a little bit of stage managing as well later on. And so theater was my safe space because as a kid, I didn't know. I'm a late diagnosed autistic person, so I didn't know that I was different. I knew that I was labeled gifted, and that made me different. But I didn't know that a lot of my other challenges tied to socializing, tied to restricted behaviors, etc., I had no idea that they were tied to neurodivergence, but I found theater to be a safe space for me because of how predictable it was, because I knew what to say, when to say it, what to do with my body, when to do it. And I could be my full, extra, dramatic self and not be called too much and not be called too sensitive. And yeah, I could just be me. And there was value in showing up as my full self in that space. So those are like two formative experiences for me in my childhood that kind of impacted what I did in college and then in grad school and even in my career today. Because in college, I majored in English literature, I minored in theater. People told me not to pursue a career in theater, even though I wanted to. And the next best step for me was if I can't do it, I can study it. And that's what led me to this more academic professorial track. I got involved in a grad school preparation program in college. I went on to transition from my BA straight into a PhD program in theater and performance studies. And oddly enough, I studied theater with a critical theory emphasis. And so I actually didn't do theater in graduate school either. I continued studying it. But in graduate school, I mentored a lot and I found that love of mentorship. I dealt with burnout, mental health issues, and developed chronic health conditions. So that's another part of my story. And then the third thing is that I became a mom, and that was another transformative event in my life. And I think that those big life events led to me finishing grad school and realizing, okay, I know what my values are. I really love service work. I really love mentoring. And I know what I need in terms of my non-negotiables, a certain set salaries, certain types of benefits. And it didn't align with the research tenure track R1 track that I was on. So I made a tough decision when I finished back in 2016. I finished my PhD and I decided I'm not going to become a professor. I'm going to work in student affairs and academic affairs. And I know you and I have that in common of the student affairs route. And I worked at a scholarship center and then later for a McNair program that supports low income and first generation and what, is called underrepresented students in their discipline within that grant. I worked with that program, directed that program for about 5 years. And after that, I made the leap into entrepreneurship. So that's in a nutshell me. I know I could always go on and
Phenomenal
on,
job.
but
No, you did a great job. You actually answered a few questions already naturally, so that was phenomenal. And I want to ask you another question that's off script. You talked about going from your bachelor's directly to a PhD. So for those who feel like they have to get the master's, can you give them some advice on either track or just encourage them that they don't have to get a master's degree necessarily?
So, not all disciplines and not all programs require a master's degree. It really depends on your field. What PhD programs are looking for in particular is that you have research skills and research experience. And if they don't require a master's degree along the way, or if they give you a master's along the way, 'cause there are master's programs that are just singular master's programs. There are MA/PhD programs where you get the master's along the way. And there are PhD programs. Mine was just a PhD. You didn't get a master's along the way, and they didn't require the master's degree. But what they did want to see is that you had that relevant research experience. And I had acquired that experience through my grad school preparation program, where I wrote an undergraduate senior thesis and where I completed a capstone project, presented my research, and I even published a portion of my thesis in an undergraduate journal. And that's what helped me to get into a PhD program without a master's degree. So if you're curious about that, I would encourage you to research the master's and PhD programs in your field, see if the master's is required. It might not be. You might get it along the way. And if it's not required, then you want to demonstrate some research experience, even if you don't have the privilege that I had of getting admitted into a grad prep program. You can still get there with showcasing research skills through courses that you've taken or even other projects that you've been involved in where you learned how to conduct research.
Phenomenal. Thank you. And I really asked that question too because um, during the day, I work as a graduate admissions counselor for graduate programs. And so I have one master's program and two doctoral programs. And I always get the question of, I'm coming out of undergrad and I'm nervous about going into my doctoral program or pursuing a doctoral degree. Should I get a master's first or can I get a master's first? And so I have my own opinion. So when I hear other people, I always ask. And I didn't realize that you had that track. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. Let me ask you. Because again, especially when I think about folks who are first generation college students, they may have been taught that you go the ladder a certain way. And I think in your experience and in my experience, there is no one ladder. You can create your desired profession, your desired experience. Yes, there's traditional things, but please note that you don't have to follow those things. Life can take you in every different way. And so, with that being said, did you think that you would go into from getting your PhD to being an entrepreneur? Like, how did you conceptualize that or just even navigate that journey?
Entrepreneurship was the last thing on my mind when I went to college and in grad school. Why? Because I'm technically second gen entrepreneur. My mom has her own botanica. So she sells a lot of religious and spiritual artifacts in her store. And we grew up with that financial uncertainty of, is the business going to do well or not? She has a brick and mortar shop. And so just seeing and witnessing the two sides of it of like it can provide a lot for the family, but then at the same time it can be very risky and very uncertain. I didn't want that. I wanted safety and security and a salary. So no, I didn't want to go into entrepreneurship. But here's another thing that you and I have in common. I am a multi-passionate. I like to do a lot of things and I am not afraid to pivot. And sometimes what has come up for me in my life is that I have reached points in my life where I've had to pivot, where it felt like staying in that current position or in that current circumstance was no longer a sustainable option for me. And because of that, I have taken those leaps, which has included leaving higher ed altogether to, haha, jokes on me, now work, continue to work in a higher ed adjacent way. So it's really interesting to me that despite me leaving higher ed, I still primarily work in higher ed spaces through my coaching, my consulting, my workshops. But it's in a way that works for me and where I get to merge my special interests, which are the grad admissions work that I do, but also the what I call sustainable productivity piece that I do of teaching how to strengthen executive functioning skills and what some people call like work-life balance strategies, although I know a lot of people don't like the word balance, but just helping people do what they need to do, the work that they want to do that matters to them.
And even in your introduction, you talked about values aligned. And so when I'm hearing your journey, I'm hearing like, oh, maybe our values change throughout our life. And so when you talk about value alignment, what are some key focal points do you bring up to help people find what their needs are?
Yeah, understanding your values is a key part of the work that I do when I work with undergraduates, graduate students, and even professionals to help them understand where they're at and if their current circumstances align with the bigger picture of where they see themselves going. And for that, like I can always say, here are my values. Now you do what I do, but that doesn't work. There's no cookie cutter way. I don't believe in a one size fits all approach. So it's always about, okay, what are your values? And to do that, there's so many different ways. There are a million and one free values assessments that you can take online. But really, it's about understanding your story and understanding what matters to you. And for that, there's a lot of reflective questions that you can ask yourself to help you to understand your values. You can ask yourself, what are some key positive, formative moments from my life that have shaped me? And I stress the positive because, again, we have a negativity bias, so we tend to remember more of the negative stuff than the positive stuff. But there always are some things that stand out to you from your previous experiences that have shaped you in a positive way. So, formative experiences are one. Thinking about your impact and legacy is another way to start to understand your values. So, where do you see yourself in 10 years when you're no longer physically on this planet? What message do you want to leave the world with that can really help people? Or even thinking about your intrinsic achievements. So, what are the things that are especially meaningful to you that you have accomplished in your life this far that can also start to help you to identify those values? So then once you write down some of these answers to any one of these questions, you'll start to notice themes. What keeps coming up? Is it
Mhm.
adventure? Is it achievement? Is it, in my case, sustainability, accessibility, ease? Is it, you name it, creativity? There's so many values. I have a list of over 100 values that I have on my blog to give people some ideas for what values could come up for them. Sometimes you don't even have to answer these reflective questions. You could just stare at this list of values and then circle the top 10 that resonate with you. And then from the top 10, try to narrow it down to 3 to 5. And that'll give you a good compass for using these values to help inform your future decision making.
I love that. And the reason I ask that too is because you talk about sustainability as well. And sometimes people think sustainability is only environmentally, right? And so when you
Right.
think about sustainability and accessibility and all those things, what is one of your favorite productivity and sustainability practices?
Ooh, that's a good question. So my favorite, I'll tell you in terms of my day to day, a lot of what I rely on is pacing myself and really understanding my energy and managing my energy. So in the world of executive functioning skills, there's a lot of different areas. And one of the many different skills is the area of time management. And for me, it's important to redefine time management as energy management because you can have all the time in the world, but if you don't have the energy for it, nothing's going to happen. And so in my case, when I say I pace myself, it means that I have had to learn the hard way and assess what my limitations are in terms of my capacity and how much I can do and when. And so that means I add a lot of breaks into my schedule. That means I have a set number of hours that I can be online in meetings before I can either flare up or get a migraine or not feel well. So it's just listening and tuning into my body, my capacity, my needs, and listening to it. And it's been a lot of trial and error. But one like quick energy management exercise that anybody can do if you want to start doing work according to your energy is to identify your circadian rhythm. And by that I mean is, are you a morning person? Are you an afternoon person? Are you an evening person? When do you find yourself most alert and in the zone? And if that's the case, don't fight it. I see a lot of folks who are night owls who are trying to force themselves to be morning people. And I'm like, there's just going to be a lot of resistance.
That's me. I am such a
Oh,
night
oh
owl.
no, I didn't know I
Such
was
a,
talking about you.
I'm such a night owl. When I tell you I get peaks of energy at 10 p.m. when I should be preparing for bed. So
Yeah.
like from about 9 to 1 a.m. So 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. I'm the most productive. And I'm like, "Ah, I want to be in bed. Like, I don't want to be doing this. But I zone in.
Yeah.
If I have 10 things on my to-do list, I'm at least able to get five of those things done between that window. And for a long time, I have fought it because it's, oh no, I got to get ready to go to work in the morning and I have to meet the needs of my job expectations because they're not doing night owl things. But I think for me, that's why I have so many other passions because I can do those at night. And that's what gives me some of that energy and really helps me like balance it all. So I'm like, okay, I got to get up in the morning and go to work and all of that. But then at night, I get to do what I want to do. So it's so funny that you say that because that's
Yeah.
me through and through.
Exactly. So then understanding that you're a night owl means that you can pair some of the things that you know will require more energy with the times that you have at night that you can do that work. And I say the times that you have because I also get that in an ideal world, we are completely in control of our schedule. And when you have a 9 to 5, there's only so much that you can do to manage that. But even when I worked a 9 to 5, I recall like pairing my low energy time for me when I'm not feeling my best is usually early mornings. And so I tried to not have any morning meetings. So no meetings before 10 if I could absolutely avoid it. And I would do the easiest, like just rote work, things that didn't require much mental energy in the mornings before my late morning, early afternoon. That's my peak. That's what I would reserve for more high focus, high energy type of work. So that's one way is to do that. Of course, I believe in setting up your own systems and figuring out what works for you. For me, a lot of it is like setting up systems that help me to reduce decision fatigue. And I also implement a lot of flexible routines. So a lot of flexibility is important because I never know how I might be feeling from day to day. Actually, scheduling in rest is important. So, break times and micro forms of care into my schedule. So, I have a little half hour that's every day on my schedule. Whether I honor it or not is a different story, but it says me time. It's just doing whatever I need to do that's just for me. That could be deep breathing, that could be stretching, that could be watching something, that could be a guided meditation, drinking my favorite beverage, whatever, you name it, journaling is just time for me and no one else. And yeah, again, there's a lot of different things that I could share that are just other strategies that could help. But at the end of the day, it's about tuning into yourself, your mind, your body, your spirit, and starting to figure out what are things that I could do to listen and to honor it.
Thank you. I'm over here taking notes, y'all. Because
Oh,
I,
you can ask away and I will share a lot more strategies. I could have a whole episode on that actually.
yes, and that would be for your podcast because I want to make sure that everyone gets to hear how her brain works. Like I'm over here, ooh, I love the language, decision fatigue. I'm like, I never heard it in that way. So I really appreciate that. And a little bit ago, you said something around we always don't have full control of our schedule, or we may assume that. And so for you as a person who's a full person, who have invisible and possibly visible disabilities. I want to say identities because it's not a disability. So I'll take that back.
It's fine. I do have disabilities, no problem.
It's just like, but art, is it really? Anyway,
There's the medical and the social model of disability. And
correct.
so, for those of us that follow the social model of disability, we believe that there are disabilities that we have that are based on the way the world functions. So, for
Right.
instance, you could be left-handed and disabled because we live in a right-handed world.
Me.
Oh, you are left-handed. Look at me. I'm left-handed too, by the way. Oh,
That's just how it is. And so thank you for that. I said all of that to say you're managing your own identities. You are also a wife and a mother. So with that allotted time, how do you still be there for your family as well as being there for yourself?
this is a tough balancing act. Some people use the term work-life integration because they're like, how do we integrate all of the different parts of our lives? And for me, there's two things that come to mind right now, just off the cuff. The first is being very clear about my non-negotiables. So, what are
Mhm.
the things that I absolutely will not compromise on? So, I have set work hours, and I'm like, I'm not going outside of those hours. Or I have set time that I have dedicated for my children, and I'm like, you're not gonna, this is a time that I honor. It's sacred time. So non-negotiables is one of them. And for you, it can be any non-negotiable. For some folks, their non-negotiable is daily time for prayer, or their non-negotiables might be regularly exercising or a movement practice, or their non-negotiable is a certain time to socialize with family or with friends. So you get to determine that. I'm not determining that for you, but once you know what those non-negotiables are, then you can set up your own internal policies. If you don't want to use that word policy or rule, but just set up your own internal system or way for you to honor those non-negotiables. And on the second side of things, that was the first thing that came to mind. The second thing that came to mind is the importance of reflection and assessment. And one way that you can assess where you are in terms of the different areas of your life, because we are we have so many facets of our lives. So I was going to say we're multifaceted. Even if you're not a multi-passionate, you have many different areas of your life. You are more than just the work you do to get a paycheck, to pay the bills. And
Right.
so for that, you can start to conduct a life assessment. I have my own version of a life assessment, but there are also other life assessments you can find online. And in these life assessments, you start to assess where you are in different categories of your life. So that can include relationships, that can include your health, that can include your finances, that can include your religion or spirituality, that can include your culture, that can include hobbies and anything that you do for restoration, etc. And then based on what from that assessment, 'cause usually they at the end of the assessment, you will complete a life wheel and you'll get to see which areas have lower scores, which areas have higher scores. And you can ask yourself, does this match what I want to prioritize right now?
Mm.
Does this match the season of life that I am in right now? And if it doesn't, what changes do I need to make to bump up the score in these areas? So, for example, for me, for a while, the area of spirituality was much lower. It was my lowest score. And I remember thinking, oh, that makes a lot of sense because of my whole complicated relationship with religion, growing up in a Catholic household and rebelling against the patriarchy, etc. So I have my own complicated relationship with religion. And when I noticed that, I thought to myself, but hold up, there's a big side of me that's very spiritual that I am not making time for and that I am not honoring. And I wanted to start to develop my own spiritual practice that felt like me, that honored not just me, but my ancestors. And once I started to do that, it wasn't a surprise that the next time I filled out my life assessment, the score went up. And I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. And also, it's in alignment with what I want to prioritize at this stage in my life, where I'm at a point where I no longer believe in black and white. There's a lot of gray in my life, and it's okay for me to believe in a higher power, even if it's not exactly the same entity that my extended family members and relatives believe in. So that's a long, long answer just to say if you want to get started with thinking about how do I make time for family or for all the things that are important to me, you can either on the one hand start to think about the life assessment or start to identify your non-negotiables.
No, you speak in my language because I feel the exact same way. Again, I feel like you're talking about me and you don't even know.
This is wild though.
Telling you, it happens every time. And so, with that, going back to some of the graduate school success aspects of it all, what would be some advice you would offer to someone who is pursuing graduate school or prospectively?
So this is for someone who's thinking about going to graduate school or someone already in graduate school?
Let's do both. First, let's start off with those who are thinking, and then those who are in it and are questioning, do I want to stay in
Yeah.
it?
So I'm going to say something that's an unpopular opinion,
That's
and then
fine.
I'll explain myself. Even though the work that I do is heavily involved in this graduate admissions work and supporting people in going to graduate school, I actually don't think that everybody needs to graduate. Sorry, let me correct that. I actually don't think that everybody needs to go to graduate school, and I don't recommend it for everybody. So
Oh,
I'm
I agree. That's not,
okay,
I
good.
agree.
Because I know there are folks who, like me, believe in higher education, but for them, that includes graduate school too. So they're like, oh, yeah, everybody should go to graduate school because of what you gain from more education. And as much as I believe in the transformation that comes with going to college, and that's something that I will encourage my children to go to college, graduate school is a different story because graduate school is not required in a lot of disciplines and a lot of fields and a lot of careers. And there's so much access to education nowadays that you can get without necessarily having to make that big time and financial investment of going to graduate school. So if you're someone who's thinking about going to graduate school, the first question I'm going to ask is the title of my book, Is Grad School for Me? So is grad school for you? What is your end goal? Is grad school going to help you get closer to it? Is grad school even a requirement for you to get closer to it? Because if not, then you could either hold off or you might not even need to go to graduate school at all. I have a business and I don't have an MBA, so I'm like living proof. And there's a lot of us in different career paths that they have been able to acquire the skills and the knowledge and the experience with a bachelor's degree and of course with a lot of connections. That's why it's important to also network. And I would make the claim that networking, community building is just as important, if not perhaps even more important than going to graduate school for career success.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And sometimes too, you may get into a job or at an organization where you're there already with your bachelor's degree and you've probably been there for a while, and then they may pay for you to get more education because you've already proven that you can do the work. But in order to get to the next level, to the next whatever that title is, they may say, maybe consider getting a master's degree, and we have some type of tuition reimbursement system or benefit. And so I think of it in that way as well, because sometimes, again, you may not need it immediately. And so I know for me, when I was in undergrad, I thought I had to go to grad school straight out of undergrad. I didn't think about pausing. And so I want to share that as well. Like, you don't have to go straight out of undergrad either. Even if you decide to go and you ask yourself that question, is grad school for me? It may be for you, but maybe not right now. And there's so many different things. Like, you can get certificates now. You don't even need a
Yeah.
full degree. Like, you can get on LinkedIn Learning, you can get on Coursera, like and then there's so many other programs that have certification opportunities. So that's another way you can still acquire some of that without that financial investment, because graduate school is not cheap, y'all. Please hear me. It is not cheap. It is a huge investment. But again, if it's important to you, and I think what I'm hearing from you is asking, like, what is your why? Like, what is your purpose for getting a degree? Is it to just the ego part of it so someone can call me doctor? Or is it because I really want to make a change in whatever area? And was that something that you had to ask yourself a lot when you were getting your degrees? Or what did you know exactly? Yes, I'm going for this only.
What was it that you were asking in terms of what I asked myself, whether or not I
Yeah,
needed to go to
what is
graduate school?
yes.
You know what? When I applied for graduate school, even though I received support from a grad school preparation program, it was never an option not to go to graduate school.
Same.
And because of that, I encourage people to understand that it is and that you have multiple options. There's a whole field called lifestyle design where you can, there's a book actually, and let me see if I can remember the name of the book. It's a lifestyle design book. It's the title is not coming to mind, but there's a book about lifestyle design where one of the main things that they teach you in that book is that you have multiple options. You can come up with at least five different career paths, lifestyle paths, and all of them are just as valid. And if you came and arrived at your current program or current job or whatever you're doing professionally, understanding that at any point in my life, I have multiple options and I can go any different way. And, what if I could be successful in all of them? Which path would I take? I think a lot of us would be making a lot of different decisions. So for me, I got into graduate school shortly after the 2008 recession, thinking to myself, I'm never going to get a job, especially not with an English degree, especially with zero work experience. And guess what? This is 2025, and y'all might be thinking the same thing. We're going into a recession. I'm never going to get a job. The job market, I have to admit, everywhere is really rough right now.
Even with the degrees.
And at the same time, you're just prolonging the inevitable and potentially adding debt to it. So, all of this to say that I do think graduate school can be transformative. It can be a great choice. And you also have to know what your options are. You have to learn more about financial literacy so that you can come in having made an informed decision. And the whole point of it is that you get to decide. It's not someone else's decision, it's yours. As long as you're making informed decisions that are your decisions, I don't think you can go wrong.
I love that. That is so important, especially when we love support. We love having a community, but sometimes that community, they talk too much.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way, of course, because no matter what, education is an investment. So you do want to make good investments, but at the same time, you do have to go for something that you're passionate about and do it for you. Because if not, you're going to resent the entire process, or you may end up resenting that support system down the line. And so as we wrap up, I would like to extend the floor back to you to say, are there any things you're working on? Is there anything you would like to promote? I know you recently had some good workshops that I've saw on LinkedIn. Feel free to share anything.
Yeah, actually, before I go into that, is it okay if I share some words for my grad students who are listening?
100%.
So I know I spent a lot of time talking about things to consider if you are thinking about applying to graduate school, but now I want to also mention what to consider if you're currently in a graduate program and maybe struggling in your graduate program. I know a lot of graduate students will hear the advice of build your support systems or find your support systems. And beyond that, I would say this is a good time to do some career exploration, to build up your network and your community. Conduct those informational interviews if you've never done them, because a lot of academics aren't necessarily encouraged or made aware that informational interviews are even a thing. So start to reach out to people in different industries where you might be able to envision yourself doing the work that you're doing now, but in a different capacity, and reach out. I recently had someone reach out to me to ask for an informational interview, and this person is a professor and they are thinking of becoming a dissertation coach, but they want to understand more about how do you transition in, is how viable is it, etc. So no matter where you are in your career, reaching out to people, building up your network, conducting informational interviews, making sure that you stay in touch, you nurture those relationships. Take advantage if you have any periods that are lull periods where maybe you're waiting on feedback or you are in between working on another project for whatever research you're doing. Take advantage of that to learn new skills, to upskill. So start to learn outside of just what you learn on your campus. That could be getting a teaching certification, that could be learning skills for other industries. All these things are going to help you because at the end of the day, I don't want you to feel like you finished your graduate program and you still feel like you have limited or no job prospects. I want you to arrive closer to the end of your graduate program feeling like, you know what? I did what I could. I got the experiences that I could. I leveraged, maximized my time both on my campus and also as a student where you're getting paid to learn. And that way, at the end of the day, you don't feel stuck or trapped, and you can, if you need to, pivot the way that we have pivoted. So that way you can not just survive, but thrive beyond your graduate program.
100%. Thank you for that. And thank you for remembering that second part.
It's okay. I know now you want me to talk about some of the stuff that I have going on. So I do want to mention the book because we are just now getting into the first year. So our book came out in April 2024. So we're at the year mark now. And I've heard from many different programs and directors that have found it to be a really useful guide. And so I want you to encourage you, if you're thinking about graduate school, to pick up a copy or order it at your local library. It's called Is Grad School for Me? Demystifying the Application Process for First-Gen BIPOC Students. I am one of the co-authors, and you can yeah, you can get started with doing this work of part one, do I even need to go to graduate school? Then part two, everything you need to know to navigate the application process with lots of samples and sample essays, templates, strategies, etc. And then part three, what do you do once you get a yes? And how do you prepare for that transition? So that's one thing I want to mention. The other thing too, maybe you're not ready to get a copy of the book, but you want more resources. I have a free grad school resource kit, and you can get that if you go to gradschoolfemtoring.com/kit. You can get a download of my kit, and you'll also be added to my email newsletter. And every week I share tips and strategies related to the topics that I covered today about both grad school, navigating grad school, getting into graduate school, and also how to build up your career and life in a way that works for you, your systems, your productivity, your time management, your non-negotiables, all the stuff. I share insights on that. Those are the two things that I mainly wanted to spotlight is the book and also my resource kit. And I have a lot of other free resources, but again, get on my newsletter so that you can know what is available.
And they can find all of that on your website, correct?
Yes, yeah. If they go to gradschoolfemtoring.com, you will see all the things. You can get the book at gradschoolfemtoring.com/book. So just go to the website, you'll see everything there.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time today and being here with me. I learned so much. Y'all should see my notes. I have so many notes because I'm always learning. I don't care who I'm talking to, I always jot things down because we all have a different language. Like today, Dr. Yvette used words that I didn't think about. And so now I'm going to incorporate that into my daily language. So thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for being here and being open to share all different parts of your story, especially when you were talking about like your origin story. Because sometimes those are not easy spaces to go back to, but they are good reminders of how far we've come and still where we can and may want to go. Thank you so much for joining us today and listening to AJD Consulting Podcast. If you haven't already, please follow us on Instagram at ajd.consulting. We will talk to you later. Bye.